So it's August 11th, approximately 49 days since my stuff was placed in the City of Vancouver property that a friend of mine calls a lawn during the eviction process. I'm just realizing that I did have a bit of a plan a while back. It's kind of easy to lose sight of that at the street level, especially if you're dealing with day-to-day minor points like survival. It's a process that's really brought home the fact that the major advances we've made have been generally in terms of saving individual labor by using collective effort and application of technologies. One of the big advances I'm always a big one about talking about was the development of grandmothers. Once we got to the point that we lived long enough that we had grandparents that were alive, the 3-generation thing, it's very key with our species. They could take over and instinctively would take over, probably because of at least partially scent, the duties of rearing their grandchildren, thereby freeing the mothers up for hunting, foraging, and also establishing multi-generational transmission of information. That kind of process is ubiquitous in almost all human development. Not a lot more to say on that. But my plan was to actually be doing some like minimalist camping on the Sunshine Coast. And I realized, yeah, it's time to start doing that. At the same time that is a real pressure, there is also a fact that some of the things I've been learning and just contemplating, thinking, having the chance to think, what a luxury to actually be broke in a developed nation in the 21st century. I'm not too scared most of the time. So I've been working on the umbrella thing. So that's the remnant foil for my first experiment. I will eventually get around to posting that video. But that was meant mostly to be a light reflector to conserve power and eventually possibly heat. I've realized that I might as well get started on it because the initial one is going to be a long, laborious process. But I'm actually beginning to realize this is something that could be a very important commercial product, not necessarily just for the profit motive, even though it would be nice to actually get paid for something that's residual for a change, but also because I do vocationally identify as public safety. Now, a funny thing about public safety is, okay, there's the immediate, take care of yourself and the people around you, but you're looking at, without judgment, the entire public. You're playing a statistics game. The experiences I've had using umbrellas as shelter give me reason to believe that if there were an umbrella that was made to not fail, and either one of two paths or maybe both, one where people are encouraged to do a very specific series of modifications, similar to like what I did this experiment with, or if it is made and people were aware of the fact that no, the umbrella is your shelter. There's something there where the distribution of higher quality umbrellas among people who actually know how to use them to retain heat, create a heat bubble, to moderate temperature, little things like learning how to develop the intuition to be able to spin them or use them to induce airflow in an area in such a way that the eddies that I call elementals, the world is conscious. It's just not Harry Potter kind of conscious. They're not going to talk to you. But there is like aspects and basically principles of fluid dynamics where if you create a small vortices or a pull in one direction, it can become self-sustaining, much like consciousness itself. That's a different series. But right now, I decided I'd start documenting the umbrella process. One of the first ones, based on experience of using this in the concrete jungle, is reinforcement of the point where the struts have that joint there. It gets heavy mechanical stress, and it's also the point that pushes out furthest in the profile. The public safety aspect is that by having enough of these, in the case of the poorly prepared for event of a seismic correction in Lower Mainland, they could make a statistical difference, and that is the main thing with actually caring about public safety. You care about those who are immediate to you, but that's a personal thing. But vocationally, you care about everybody, even the ones you dislike. Because ideally, if everyone is safe and sound, they won't necessarily be inclined to be adversarial, enemies, or whatever. And that includes to the person who's actually advocating for public safety. Part of the spark for this insight right now, and this sort of process that I'm going to be spending the day on, was that over here there's been some interesting activity the last few days with surveyors, engineers, whatever. And I finally asked one guy with one of those little rolling counter things they use for distance, where he pushes it along like those old child's toys, and it gives a precise measurement. It turns out that between the two sections of this muse that I've been spending a large amount of time in, the water barrier underneath has actually split between the two. And we got to discussing a fair bit about how that could actually play out and how much of the architecture of the city could play out in the case of this seismic event. And it was nice. It was a very intelligent conversation. And also sort of disturbing. It's kind of neat that I can relate most to people who smile while talking about absolute horror. But the potential for a large number of these umbrellas, like being out there, as I'm going to try to make it into, this is still a proof of concept, and I have to test it for myself while camping. I'll try light weather first. That can make a huge difference, because it means that there's people who have their own shelter at need who can save just a few joules of energy, keeping themselves warm or dry, or demonstrating something to people that will keep them engaged and be useful, save power, retain heat, have a sense of security, have encouragement to have a stick with them, which is so fundamental that most people do not understand it. It's like a stick and a blade and something to tie stuff together with. Really, really important. Yeah. So I'm going to see what I can do with that. And I'm thinking of making a little sign here. I'm going to ask people at the library about it, and possibly have a sign saying, "Preparing for extreme minimalist camping, survival tips for apocalypse, free or by donation," or something like that. That gives me a reason to be here, and other things. Just so it's not completely me talking about motivations, etc. That is Gorilla Tape. I used a little bit of dollar store all-purpose glue at the top and just a little bit by sides. I don't have very much. Unlimited resources after all. And I put that along each point. I'm letting it dry fully in the sun. And this will be covered by a second layer. I've got a umbrella skin that will be going on the outside as sort of probably the final stage of this. Over the course of the day, I'll probably be cutting template pieces. It turns out that the contact cement does keep the space blanket, mylar, I think it is mylar, or something, in contact and intact against the fabric of the umbrella. So I'll be doing those panels for that inside ring. I'm not sure if I think I'll do temporary for the outer ring, because I don't know how opening and closing that will affect the wear on that. I might need something more solid, even for this pilot project. And yeah, get those on. Probably have to go do a run to the dollar store to get one more thing of glue. I'm going to make that solid as possible. And then next time I'm at the storage locker, I might actually grab my laser thermometer and see how much heat I'm actually getting to retain using just the inside ring. I'll do a surface area calculation, and I think I can make a series of micro videos on this as opposed to single long ones. So this is sort of the forward to a series of micros. And maybe I'll actually keep these separate from my gaming ones or just other observations. Or maybe I'll jumble it all together so people, have to look through them at least to find the ones they want that are of relevance to them. Yeah. Oh. And I was also doing some wax application to candles, or not candles, to long matches. Paraffin wax melted to as permeable a temperature as I could without burning it, imbuing the matches, and then using a little bit of heat, not enough to ignite them, to remove the excess from the match heads. Theoretically, that makes some good strike anywhere matches. And the reason to remove I did over a candle there, that little London Drugs box is eventually going to be a fire starter of its own. The reason to do the removal, like just by slow heat, of excess wax is so that the striker on the package does not get clogged with the wax. I'll be doing one little one a little bit later, and I will see how it works. I may have just actually not wasted all these matches, but rather I'll just put more wax on them and use them as like kindling. Part of the idea of the survivalism is you do not waste, and this gets eventually to a point where it's like I would not be wasting these words because potentially I could be needing every calorie or every breath. In the meantime, it's just a game, right? Right?